Welcome back, everyone. Our next session is going to be about Quizlet for language teachers. This is going to be led by Stephanie Sheridan. She's a really awesome language teacher and has written lots of articles on the Quizlet blog as well, if maybe after the session you want to look on there for some more resources. But these are also going to be some awesome tips that are really useful to any classroom setting. She's got lots of cool games and tips that she has and creative ways to use Quizlet. So if you want to take it away now, Stephanie, I'm really excited for your presentation.
All right, so as Claire said, my name is Stephanie and I'm a middle school Spanish teacher. I've been teaching Spanish for 12 years. And I'm the tech leader in my building, and I blog for Quizlet about some of the games that you're going to hear about today. So let's go ahead and an overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about using Quizlet for pre-teaching in the classroom and sort of flipping your classroom. And then we're going to talk about a lot of different games. Also, if you are a language teacher and you teach heritage learners, then I'm going to throw in some tips there of how you can differentiate the games to make them applicable to your heritage learners as well. Finally, we'll look at diagrams and how you can incorporate those into games. And we'll have some time for questions. So please make sure you jot down some questions as we go. Most of my presentation sort of kind of assumes that you know the basics of Quizlet. So if there's something about like, wait, how do I do that? Just make sure that you ask. So let's get started. One of the main ways that I use Quizlet is for pre-teaching, and this is how I flip my classroom. We are so crunched for time that not everybody sees their kids every day. So if you can assign Quizlet for homework, then you can use your class time for connecting and speaking and using the information. So a lot of the times I have my kids do the studying and the note-taking at home. And what that looks like is that I explicitly go over these rules with them the first time I assign a Quizlet as homework, and I ask them to go through the Quizlet flashcards with sound. So what that looks like is if you're in the flashcards and you click on the icon over here.
Alto.
I can't really speak for the other languages, but I know for Spanish, the pronunciation is really good. And so I asked them to go through
Alto. Alto.
and listen a few times, and I asked them to repeat out loud. Who knows if they actually do that, but that they get the input that way by listening to it. You can also get to that sound icon in the list for them as well.
Pequeño.
So
Small.
I ask them to do that at home so they're hearing the pronunciation. And then I ask them to play a game of their choice between writing, spelling, match, or gravity, and play as many times as they need to feel comfortable using the material the next day. And I tell kids ahead of time, like, you all learn at different paces, and so some of you, you only need to study for 10 minutes, and some of you need to study for 20 minutes, but play the game until you feel comfortable using it in class the next day. We also talk about the difference between passive and active studying, and this is why I don't ask, flashcard is not a choice. You have to do one of the games where you physically have to type something in because that's active studying. And finally, typically they have a vocab list on paper that they are going to go through the Quizlet, and they're going to write in the definitions and draw the pictures to go with the words as their study tool. So they come into class the next day with their notes and having studied the words to be able to use them. Okay, and then the homework check is a game. There's lots of benefits to this. Usually it's Quizlet Live or maybe one of the other games I'm about to show you. But let's face it, kids are motivated by each other. They want to impress their friends. And so the way I get them to do their homework is by having competitions, because those are fun and engaging. And so if they know they're coming in and they're going to play Quizlet Live first thing in class, they're going to do their homework because they don't want to be the weak link on their team. And however, for those kids that just didn't do the homework, chose not to, or weren't able to for whatever reason, when we play the game at the beginning of class, this becomes their input and their repetition. And they get, I make them do the homework at the beginning of class if this is the case, and they're doing it through a game. So, okay, so if you have heritage learners in your class, what are some ways to differentiate with these tools? So there's two scenarios most of the time. A lot of people have mixed classes where they just have like one or two kids that speak Spanish at home. And so to differentiate in this way, don't make them learn the same words as everybody else if they already know them. You can give them the same list as everybody else, but then maybe have them come up with a synonym or an antonym, and then they create their own Quizlet with those words. If you are lucky enough to have a dedicated class of heritage learners, which I do, I let the kids generate their own lists for homework. So in class, we will read something and annotate it, and then for homework, they're going to go through and they're going to pick out 5 to 10 words that they personally didn't know, because in a heritage class, you're always like, everybody's going to know different words, and you don't want to make them study what they already know. So they make their own list in Quizlet, and then they share the Quizlet with you so you have access to it and you can see it. Another thing you can do.
Hey, Stephanie, we just have some questions coming in just for clarification on what a heritage speaker is, if you wouldn't mind just clarifying that for people.
Yeah, sure, no problem. A heritage speaker is somebody that maybe speaks Spanish with their family at home, but they never learned Spanish in an academic setting. So they maybe don't know how to read and write in Spanish or whatever language it is that you're teaching. Hopefully that clears it up. All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So you either have the kids generate their own list and they share it with you. And then if you're really ambitious, you can, create individualized quizzes for those kids using their own words. But if you can't do that, which is asking a whole lot, the other thing you can do is as the bell ringer for the next day, you have the kids put those words that they chose into a Google form, which I have linked in this presentation for you if you just want to make a copy of mine. But what it looks like is this, and the kids just, they just put their, whoops, I don't know why it's not letting me. Okay, there we go. They just put in their 5 words that they chose, and then you as the teacher look at the responses, and you can see like, okay, I had 3 kids fill this out. 2 of those kids didn't know the word trajectory. I, as a teacher, am now going to create my own Quizlet, and I'm going to use the most frequently submitted words as my Quizlet, and that's what I'm going to assess on. So again, the kids are still generating what they need, but you're streamlining it a little bit for your own sanity. So, okay, back to the presentation. Okay. All right, games, the really fun part. So what I'm going to start by saying is that most of these games are not new. You've probably seen them before. But the reason I love Quizlet for these games is that before I was using Quizlet, for every unit or vocabulary session, I was making new materials. And if I wanted to play 5 different games, I had to make 5 different things. But when you use Quizlet, you're working smarter, not harder, because everything is in one location and you have, access to a whole bunch of games in one place without having to spend all the time creating. So the first game is Quizlet Live, and I know there's been other panels already on Quizlet Live, but when you go into your teacher panel, it's right on the side here. And so you as a teacher will click on this. The kids will see on your projection screen this code that they enter, and they, first they go to Quizlet.live and they put in this code and they type in their name and you click Create Game. This will put the kids into teams. You give them about 60 seconds to go sit with their team. And what it looks like is they will see only a certain amount of flashcards, and they'll see the question at the top of the screen. If they personally have the answer to that flashcard, they click on it. And it's a race against all the other teams. So on your teacher projection screen, they will see this here, and they're trying to race to be the first team done. So it's really fast paced and really fun. And this is my favorite way to homework check what if they had a homework assignment in Quizlet. Okay. But so here are some teacher tips for this. If the same team wins 2 times in a row, I shuffle the teams. I click the shuffle button just to keep things fair. However, if kids ask me to shuffle, which sometimes they do, I won't do it because that's mean. And we talk about that. But like, you don't want to be the person that wants to be on a different team. So, and then let's see. Click. Whoop. All done. There we go. Okay. This game can get really loud. So if you're not somebody that can tolerate a super loud classroom, this might not be the game for you. Although I'm going to talk about in a minute, there are variations to this game that are quieter. And then some language teachers complain that there's too much English when you play this game. But I say teach the kids the phrases they need to know for this game. I have a poster in the front of my room that has some of these key phrases in Spanish. And I just teach the kids at the beginning. So when they're calling out in Spanish. Another great tool for this game can be super fast. If your kids really studied the night before, they might complete a game in 30 seconds. And so you can play this game 10 times and only used 5 minutes of class time. So I don't like to be tied to my computer. So this app, Remote Mouse, which is free, if you download it on your phone and you download it on your computer and then you pair the two, it's very easy to do. It turns your phone into a remote mouse pad, and so then I can walk around and monitor the kids, and as soon as the game ends, then I can just click start again without having to run back to my computer. And as I mentioned before, there's a whole lot of variety of Quizlet, of ways to play Quizlet live. I think there's actually a whole nother session on variations for this game. So some people play like the silent way, some people play relays. I really encourage you to check out the blog for other ways to use this game. It's great. Okay, another differentiation tool for heritage speakers. You could, if they're generating their own list, you can randomly choose someone's list as the list that you're gonna use to play the game with. And what's kind of funny about this is you'll always have kids that are like, I knew every single word in this article. And you're like, oh, really? Okay, well, let's use Maria's list. And they don't know every word. So it's just a fun way to get them to learn new words too. All right, game 2, match relays. This is using the match game feature. And in this game, you're going to set the kids up in teams of 4, but they can only have 1 device at a time. Everybody on the team can help, but only 1 student can touch the device. And basically what they do is they get set up, they open the match feature, and I'll say like 1, 2, 3, go, and they click start, and they play the match game, and they do it as fast as they can. And when the team finishes the match game, they have to all jump up or all raise their hand, and they get points based on which team finishes first. So in a class of 7, like if I have 7 teams in a class, the first team done gets 7 points, 6 points, etc. And so like this is what my scoreboard looks like at the end. And then they pass the device to the next person until everybody has a turn. This is also a really fast-paced game. And I'll show you the video of what this looks like in action. So you can see you just shout out the different points and then you write them down and score them at the end. That's a fun one. The next game, Around the World. This is a super old game. I'm sure you've played this before, but again, by using Quizlet, you're not having to print out and keep files of a million different vocabulary cards. You're using the flashcards feature. 2 students face off at a time, and the first person to call out the correct term advances to play against the next student, and whoever loses sits in the seat where they lost. In my class, some teachers make the kids get all the way around the world and beat the entire class to win a prize. I make them beat 6 kids in a row to get a prize because I think that keeps them more engaged. So in flashcards, if you click on the options button, And then for me, depends how you set up your cards, but like I would want the kids to answer with Spanish. So they're going to see the picture or the term in English, and then they have to give me the Spanish. So they see this picture, they call out the word, and then when you get to the end of the deck, you click the shuffle button and you keep playing from there. For heritage speakers, in a mixed class, if you just have 1 or 2 kids, sometimes you might want to let the student be the teacher and work your computer because this game is not great for them. Otherwise, you want to strategically place them. So like last year, I had a class with just 1 kid that spoke fluent Spanish in a regular Spanish 1 class, and he sat on the left side of the room. So I started the game always on the right side of the room, so he was last because that gave everybody the chance to play. And then when they got to him, he would get the chance to beat the whole entire class. But if he were somewhere at the beginning, then kids kind of give up. If you have a dedicated class of heritage learners, just make sure that you're using a teacher-generated list so everybody has the same terms and it's fair. Okay. Game 4, hide and seek vocab. This is kind of a variation of the hot and cold game, again with the flashcards. So you're going to divide your class into 2 teams. And the purpose of this game is pronunciation. And so you have your hiders and your seekers. And the first pair is going to send their seeker into the hall for like 20 seconds while the hider hides something around the room. I use like a brightly colored piece of construction paper. And I have rules for how and where the kids can hide it. So I'll just give you a couple seconds to read that yourself. This just keeps the game running more smoothly. And so I project the flashcard onto the screen, and the hider will go open the door for the seeker. And we, as a class, we chant the word more loudly as they get closer. So if the kid enters on the left side of the room and the word was hidden on the right side of the room, and say the word projected on the screen is apple, we'll start off apple, apple, apple. And as they get closer, we get louder, apple, 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 until they find the word, and then they have to give the definition. A tip for this game, so that you don't annoy your coworkers, I tell my kids they can't get any louder than their regular speaking voice, and as the person gets super close, they shake their hands too. Apple, 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 like that. With a large class, you really want to set a timer. Give them like a minute and 15 seconds or whatever to find the word, so everybody gets a turn. Otherwise, this game can get boring after too long. You really want to tell your students the purpose of this game, that it's to practice pronunciation. And so therefore, when we chant the word, we all chant it in unison at the same rhythm so that we hear it and we're getting all that repetition of the word over and over again. In the flashcard feature, if the kids get off or they're mispronouncing the word or they're off rhythm or whatever, I just click on the sound icon again, like 3 or 4 times in a row, and that will redirect them to the correct pronunciation. It happens a lot with words with accent marks. This is not a great game for a heritage class. So if you have a mixed class, you might want to assign the heritage learner a job. Kids always want to be the bodyguard at the door to make sure the seeker is not cheating by peeking through the window. So that's a good job for your heritage speaker. All right, which brings us to game 5, heads up or taboo. Probably another game you already know, but we're using our flashcards button again. In this feature on your teacher screen, when you click on these 3 dots, it will bring you to print. From print, you can either choose small or large, and make sure you uncheck the print images. If you used images, you don't want to print those. And it'll give you a list that kind of looks like this. You're going to cut up these pieces and put them into baggies. So if you plan to have 5 teams, you'll need 5 baggies. And pass one out to each team. And so within the team, you want to have, maybe you have one kid open up their Chromebook or device and just go to Google and type in 2-minute timer. They're going to be the timekeeper. The first player starts with the deck of cards, and they have 2 minutes to describe the word on the card. using circumlocution, which is something I would have previously taught my kids. So again, if we're using apple, they can say things like, it's red, it's a fruit, it's delicious, and the kid has to guess apple. To keep kids engaged, both the player who is describing and the player who guesses the correct word gets a point. And then they try to see how many cards they can get through before the buzzer goes off. And then they pass the deck to the next person, and the kid who got the most points at the end is the winner. In a mixed class, you know your kids best, so you need to decide if it's better to have heterogeneous groups or homogeneous groups. In my class, if I had like just one or two heritage kids in a section, I would make sure that I put them with my highest achieving non-heritage kids, just so it's fair. And they're also being challenged enough. If you have like 5 or 6 kids in a class, maybe they're their own team and you just have the heritage team. But again, you know how your kids are going to work best. But it's a great game if you have just a dedicated heritage class. To work on circumlocution is just a really awesome skill in a language class. Game 6, word sort. Again, nothing new. We're going to use the same exact setup as the previous game where we printed out the card. So I only printed it once, and now I'm repurposing it for a new activity. The kids are going to just sort the terms in a way that is logical to them, and then in the target language, they have to explain to you why they did the sort. And if a group finishes super early, I then have them come up with a new system and explain to me their new sorting system. And the last game for this presentation is Fly Sweater, which I played when I was in 6th grade, like a really long time ago, so it's an old game. But the Quizlet variation of this is using diagrams. So to create a diagram, you just go into create like you would a normal set, but in this box here, you can drag and drop an image. So let's say you're teaching, body parts or whatever, you drag an image and into here, and then you use the on-screen prompts to help you label the different body parts, and that will create the diagram that way. And then they can use the diagram for other things too, like for any of the other games within Quizlet, I believe, like matching or spelling or anything like that, they can use it. So this is just kind of more for visual learners. Or you can just search, because there are other diagrams created at the top where you would search. Instead of searching for study sets, you're going to search for diagrams and use somebody else's that was already made. And then you project your diagram on the screen, and it's great because you don't have to, for each unit, you don't have to look for like individual clip art for each word that you're trying to, visualize. And it's just there forever. So if you haven't played this game before, here are the directions. You project the diagram on the screen, and you line up the kids in 2 rows, and they face off one at a time with the fly sweater. You, as the teacher, call out the term, and whoever hits it first wins. In a heritage class, in a mixed class, you don't really have to differentiate this at all, because this game is a little bit about agility, so it's generally fair all around. In a dedicated heritage class, you might, instead of doing vocabulary terms, you might talk about like put up a story map and give information from the story and say, which this could work for an English class too. You give like the rising action and the kid of the story, and the kids would have to hit rising action and identify that. For social studies classes or for Spanish language classes, maps, countries, state identification, things like that work well with diagrams and this game. So just to reiterate, like I said earlier, not a lot of these games are new. You've probably played them before, but and when you do it within Quizlet, it just saves a lot of time. And you have everything in one place. And it's just been really wonderful for me. If I have 5 minutes at the end of class and I just need to fill 5 minutes, I open up Quizlet and we play one of these games. And I don't have to like go find the file or anything like that. So that's it for me.
That was great, Stephanie. We've got some questions here actually for you.
Okay.
And that was really great to hear all those different games that you play with your students. So an anonymous attendee asked, how do you handle students who do not come to class prepared? What do you do if a large part of your class does not come prepared for class? Wondering if you have any tips or guidelines for that for teachers?
Yeah. So we will still play the game, but you can tell pretty quickly if the game is taking a long time, like Quizlet Live. If it's taking a long time, then they obviously didn't prepare, and I stop the game and we'll do something. We'll do something else, and then we just don't get to play games. But I make a really big deal in the beginning out of it, of like, you want to make sure that you're prepared for tomorrow, because otherwise you don't get to play the games.
Yeah.
But it does happen. For sure it happens that some kids just don't do it.
Awesome. Let me pull up the other question we had here. So Christina asks, you said that you had a poster with Spanish phrases for students to use during Quizlet games. Could you share what some of those phrases are?
So I had in the, let me find it.
You need to share your screen again?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I can stop my sharing.
So, where did it go? So so here I put them in English just so they were applicable to everybody, but or accessible to everybody. But here are some of the phrases at the bottom. I have it, I'm done, one more, faster, we won, one more time. Those are some of the phrases that the kids will call out when they're playing.
Awesome. Cool. And then we have a lot of questions about people just wanting to share some of your presentations, which is really great. I was wondering if there was any way you wanted to share them with teachers. And I can also point out, on the blog where you've actually written up a lot of these, but
yeah,
I wanted to ask you if there was a way that teachers could contact you.
Sure. Yeah. What's easiest? Do you want me, are you able to share out the link to people, or I can put my email?
Share out that link to people right in the chat.
Okay. And I'll put my email on the last slide real quick, and people can email me here too.
I will put that in the chat right now.
And then
super cool.
Yeah, and then this
awesome.
Is my blog.
Perfect. Too. We will put that in the chat. And then I'm just going to point out actually something on our blog just so teachers can know where this is as a resource. So if you go to Quizlet.com, Quizlet.com/blog. Over here on the right, you have the option to select for teachers. So this can be a really great way to find resources for your classroom. Here we have some Quizlet Live variants and Quizlet Live playoffs. And then things, like from Nathan, ways to use Quizlet in the language classroom. And then lots of things that Stephanie talked about today are also going to be found on this blog. So here we have match relays, for example. So that's a really great resource for you guys.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions or?
So
Here I have Joe here from User Operations. Just introduce him.
Hi everyone, my name is Joe. I'm the User Ops team here at Quizlet. I'm going to answer a question live right now, which I believe was asked by Betsy. The question was, is there a comparison of Quizlet free versus upgrade features? Perhaps just a list of what features are in the free version and what features are added to the paid teacher account. So the quick answer to this is we don't currently have a comparison per se of free versus upgrade. However, we did outline just a list of features about Quizlet Teacher in one of our webinars yesterday, which has been recorded. So it will be posted live soon. So you can refer back to that session and learn more about the benefits of Teacher there.
So, any other questions from the audience?
Still looking through them.
No worries.
Here's a question for Stephanie. How do you measure who's hit the image first? If they're both playing fast and you're playing the fly swatter game.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that. What'd you say?
Yeah, so the question was just like, how do you handle if two students are answering really quickly with the fly swatter, if they're answering at the same time?
Oh, I just say redo, and I pick a different word. Yeah, because they tie a lot. Same with around the world. If it's a tie, we just redo. Yeah.
Any other questions? Or?
Here's someone who says, with heritage speakers, often writing and correct spelling is a problem. Which of these games presented do you think would practice writing the best?
That's a very good question. So, let me think about this for a second. The flipped classroom activity, you can practice writing, because if they have them do the spell feature as their game to learn the words. Otherwise, I've heard other teachers do, like when they make a differentiated vocabulary list for their kids, their kids are required to spell the words. So if it's a mixed class, and maybe you just require your non-native speakers to know the definitions, but the way you assess the heritage speakers is that they have to know the spelling. So that's a big piece of it. But you're right, I actually did not, I don't think I gave you any writing games. That is a big factor, though, for heritage speakers.
So we just had a question about, so for around the world, do you show the flashcards to the whole class, or do students each have their own device?
No, there's no device. The kids don't have a device. It's just the teacher projecting on the board.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
There's a number of questions about our blog and where to find it again. So there's lots of great ideas for teachers on our blog. It's quizlet.com/blog. If you click on the teachers link in the sidebar, you can see all the great ideas that other teachers have shared with us about how they've integrated Quizlet into their classroom with their students. So quizlet.com/blog. And you can also find that link in the footer of our website.
You go to quizlet.com/blog, and then you can click here on the teachers right here.
You can also access that anytime you're logged into Quizlet. If you just want to click on that Quizlet logo there in the upper left, if you scroll down, the blog will always preview in the sidebar. So that's the easiest way to get the blog, and then you can then filter to kind of teacher-related posts specifically.
Teachers.
Another thing to note is if you have your own great ideas for different ways to use Quizlet study modes in this way, really creatively, that you think other teachers would benefit from, you can always reach out to us with your own ideas. So the best way to do that is to either contact us via our help center. Actually, that is probably the best way. Just write into our help center, let us know you have a great idea, and that will be, passed over to someone who can actually highlight it on the blog.
So I think those are all the questions that we have right now. So thank you guys so much, and thank you, Stephanie, once again for sharing that. That was really great to hear, and those were some really cool and creative ideas for the classroom. So with that, we're going to take a break for a little bit, and so you guys have time now to grab something to eat, go take a quick walk and stretch your legs. It's been a really great morning. We've loved hearing from all of the teachers and all your wonderful ideas. After the break, we'll be coming back at 11:50 to hear some really cool variations on Quizlet Live. So definitely stay tuned for that. It's going to be really awesome to hear, some really cool games that Patrick McMillan uses in his classroom. And then after that, we're going to wrap things up by talking about, the ways that you can share Quizlet with other teachers to really share what you've learned today. If you're enjoying the Unconference, make sure to go on social media, #Quizlet Unconference, and share the love. Thanks, guys.